Day 3. Had a little espresso this morning, actually decaf, but gonna go hit the gym now. Got a little early morning session, some conditioning, some mobility, stretching, a little bit of core work, that kind of thing. Then later today I've got a shoulders and arms session. Looking forward to that. Sitting in the garden today, getting some work done, as it is nice and bright out, sun is shining, feeling good. I found these vintage sunglasses. They were my dad's from probably like the 60s. How awesome are they? Anyway, I want to sit out here and quickly talk to you about 10 things that I wish I knew when I started training. Number 1, foundations are key. What I mean by this is that when you start training, you need to work through compound movements, need to understand good form, good technique, and execution of the movements. So we're learning how to contract a muscle, how to stabilize the spine, and how to move effectively. Number 2, going back to yesterday's vlog about planning and training. My second point that I wish I knew when I started is how important it is to plan your progression and have an outline of your training and how you can move forwards, and not just going in, doing this, doing that, training arms, just trying to work to kind of a failure and feel like you've done something all of the time. Making sure there's that strategic, planned and progressive movement through training. Number 3, so mobility and stretching. Making sure that you're able to move through the right ranges of motion, making sure that we're tackling any sort of posture issues, any kind of restrictions or tightness in the muscle. Mobility and stretching are so important, and I think when you get started, you don't think of it. You're generally young and you're just like, I'm young, I'm supple, I'm fine. But as you progress, as your training age gets older, you start to realize the effects that training has. It tightens muscles and you feel more restricted. Number 4, you don't need to go balls to the wall every session, every set, every rep. You don't need to work to that kind of point where you're failing every time. Training is a long-term game. That's why I was saying earlier, you want that kind of progression over the duration of time we're training. You can't get that if you're always pushing yourself to failure and not allowing that recovery and not allowing yourself to have that fluctuation in your training program. Number 5, monitoring and tracking your progress. Not just necessarily in the gym, but your physical progress as well. Taking progress pictures, taking measurements, like skin fold caliper tests. All of these different data points give us indications of how we're progressing. I mean, I'd love to be able to look back and see how I progressed in those kind of early stages, but I just haven't got the data points. Partly because I was ashamed of my body. I didn't sort of want to like take pictures of myself. I just wanted to go in, work hard and get to that point where I felt comfortable. But sometimes we can kind of lose track of where we've actually come from when we're feeling these kind of struggles, and being able to look back where we've come from and how much progress we've actually made to this point is a good factor. And so wherever you are, start taking these kind of data points, because when you look back, when you see there has been progress, it spurs you on. Number 6, muscular balances and joint health. It's kind of links with some of that mobility and stretching stuff I was talking about earlier, but more specifically, working muscle groups that need to be worked, not necessarily just muscle groups that we want to work. As we start out, me, same as everyone else, I wanted big chest, big arms, and so that was what I'd done a lot of. And what actually happened, I caused a lot of internal rotation at the shoulder, become sort of very kyphotic, so like a hunchback basically, because I wasn't working the right muscles through the back, the stabilization and sort of postural muscles to create a nice, well-balanced physique. When we're looking at how we look, we need to sort of work the right muscles and create this balance in our training. Obviously it's very individual because we all have very different body types in where we might necessarily need to put more volume to bring up lagging body parts. Number 7, your enjoyment of training should be paramount in any program. If you don't like it, if you don't like that style of training, you're not going to stick to it. So trying to do something because it's what you think you're meant to do is counterintuitive, because if you want a result, there's plenty of different ways to get it. You don't have to do this one style of training. You don't have to do this one style of diet. There's many different ways, and ultimately if you enjoy it, you're more likely to stick to it. If you're more likely to stick to it, you're more likely to get the results. So making training fun, making it enjoyable, doing what you like, and generally just kind of having fun with it anyway. A lot of the times I'm a sort of a big culprit of this because I go very in depth with, right, how can I make this as quote unquote optimal as possible, forgetting that sometimes you just need to enjoy it. Number 8, a plan is just a plan. It's a template that you can adjust and implement to make tweaks to. It's a guide. You've got to not think that you have to stick to this 100% all of the time. You need to take this plan, put it into your day and make adjustments around it. You can't always be like, I have to go to the gym, I have to do this, and you get there and someone's on that machine or someone's taking the squat rack, and what do you do then? You've got to make adjustments to it, and this is going to be dependent on your level and your goals as well. You need to be able to adjust your programming and your training plan to your lifestyle. Number 9, kind of linked with number 8, looking at training in a way of planes of motion, planes of movement, and exercise kind of templates as well. So not trying to think you have to do X exercise for chest. For example, I have to do a barbell bench press. Well, if that's not available at that gym, or you might be traveling and can't get onto that kind of thing, looking at a plane of motion to replicate the movement, changing up equipment, using dumbbells to do the same movement. All we're looking in that motion is a horizontal press, so we'll still be stimulating the chest but in just slightly different manner. Yes, it's going to make it a little bit harder to monitor that progressive overload, because obviously a dumbbell press is slightly different to a barbell bench press in terms of the weights that you'll be able to use, so there is a slight differential, but you can adjust this training plan. Learning the planes of movement is going to help you think and not necessarily stress so much about your training when you're trying to do it. Okay, so let me just adjust. Number 10, the big one. Muscle and strength are not independent of each other. You can work to build both. When I was starting, I was thinking it was very much a case of I have to work towards that strength capacity, or I have to work towards that muscle building capacity or fat loss. Training is like a web. If you're building muscle, it's likely you're building strength at the same time, and your programming can incorporate both, and both kind of typical rep ranges. Creating that variation between all different rep ranges is going to help you progress. Okay, I've actually just thought of an 11th, so this is a bonus one. Building muscle takes a lot of time. Fat loss is relatively quick compared to building muscle. So if you're in a bit of a skinny fat phase, I would suggest you get lean, see what you have in terms of muscle mass, then focus on progressively building that overload, increasing your caloric intake, focusing on building muscle tissue for the majority of your training years, in those sort of first 1, 2, 3 years. You can incorporate mini cuts and smaller sort of dieting phase to kind of keep that body fat in check, but the majority of your time should be spent building muscle. If you try and kind of do both at the same time, you're just going to get nowhere, and you'll be forever flipping between the two, trying to kind of find some level of, oh, I'm actually seeing progress with this, I like the way I'm looking. It's not going to happen. You're not really going to be building muscle and losing fat at the same time. If you spend a couple of weeks, couple of months losing body fat, then really put the time and effort into building muscle, you can then maintain a relatively lean physique, but progressively build muscle on top of that, and you'll be much happier with your body and your progress working through that. Anyway, it's about time I went and hit the gym.